Hi, I'm Blake Lively, and I'm going to be taking the BuzzFeed quiz, which iconic Blake Lively character?
Hi besties, I am Dhruvyata Baskan Lashari with Corventa. Today we should discuss about
The story of Blake Lively and Taylor Swift's friendship unraveling has become one of the most talked about celebrity sagas in recent memory. A tale layered with public smiles, private whispers, carefully staged appearances, and an eventual silence that seemed louder than any red carpet flashbulb. When Taylor Swift's engagement to Travis Kelce broke into the headlines, fans all around the world celebrated what they thought was a fairy tale moment for the superstar. But almost immediately the louder conversation became not about the sparkling ring, the flowers, or even the surprise proposal itself, but about who was missing from the celebration. It wasn't just any name left off the guest list. It was Blake Lively, the woman who for years had been painted by tabloids and Taylor's own fandom as the ultimate best friend. A sisterly figure, someone who seemed woven into Taylor's narrative both as an artist and as a woman navigating fame. That absence became the spark for speculation. And soon what should have been a joyful milestone was reframed as a mystery. Why wasn't Blake there? And what did it mean for one of Hollywood's most famous friendships? For years, Taylor and Blake appeared inseparable. They weren't just two celebrities occasionally photographed together. They were marketed, consciously or not, as a package deal. Red carpets saw them side by side in gowns that complemented one another. Social media feeds carried posts where their banter and affection played out for millions of fans to witness. And even family life blurred as Blake and Ryan Reynolds' children were name-checked in Taylor's music. The mythology was powerful. Two successful women holding hands through the chaos of an industry often accused of pitting women against each other. To outsiders, it looked effortless, like the kind of rare Hollywood sisterhood people crave to believe in. But as is often the case, the truth hiding behind staged photos and smiling interviews was much more complicated. When Taylor's engagement news surfaced, Blake's name was missing in a way that could not be brushed off as coincidence. Reports quickly suggested that Blake learned of the engagement not through a private phone call, not with the intimacy one might expect from a best friend, but at the same time as the rest of the world, through public headlines. That detail alone was enough to set the internet on fire, because it contradicted the narrative built for years. How could someone so close be left in the dark about such a monumental step? Was this an oversight, or was it a deliberate act that signaled a fracture deeper than anyone had realized? Fans who had idolized their friendship began looking back at old interactions with new eyes, suddenly noticing the breadcrumbs that had been there all along. Fewer joint posts, subtle absences at events, moments that seemed insignificant in isolation, but now looked like pieces of a larger puzzle. For years, Taylor and Blake appeared inseparable. They weren't just two celebrities occasionally photographed together. They were marketed, consciously or not, as a package deal. Red carpets saw them side by side in gowns. The betrayal, if that's what it was, didn't seem to happen overnight. Insiders whisper that the friendship had been cooling for months, maybe years, that beneath the sisterhood branding there were tensions never fully resolved. One of the strongest rumors centers around alleged text messages exchanged between the two, messages that reportedly carried a sharper, colder tone than anyone expected. These weren't the emoji-filled late-night texts of two women gushing over life updates. Instead, they hinted at frustration, boundaries being crossed, even a kind of veiled bitterness. To fans, the suggestion of such messages was shocking because it stripped away the illusion of effortless loyalty. Suddenly the polished image of unshakable friendship felt more like a performance, one in which both women played their roles for the sake of publicity, but privately struggled with unspoken resentments. What made this rupture more dramatic was the timing. Taylor's engagement, staged in a lush garden with Travis Kelce on one knee, wasn't a casual event. It was a heavily curated moment designed to dominate the cultural conversation, complete with carefully released photos, jewelry details, and breathless commentary across podcasts and platforms. For Blake not to be there, not even in the background, not even in a passing mention, was glaring. This wasn't a small dinner where invites might be limited. It was a glittering affair with a guest list so expansive it included celebrities with far weaker ties to Taylor. For Blake, someone positioned as family, to be excluded sent a message that couldn't be ignored. Theories flooded in. Some argued that Taylor had quietly grown tired of defending Blake amid Blake's other controversies, particularly as Blake faced scrutiny in unrelated legal battles and industry gossip. Others believed Ryan Reynolds, never shy with his humor, may have let something slip in public that rubbed Taylor the wrong way. Still others went back to rumors of a backstage clash at one of Taylor's concerts, where Blake allegedly overstepped in ways that Taylor found disrespectful. None of these theories have ever been confirmed, but together they paint a picture of a friendship already on shaky ground long before the engagement headlines broke. The dynamic of power also matters here. Taylor Swift isn't just a pop star. She's a cultural force, someone whose control over her brand is legendary. Every photo, every friendship, every narrative is carefully shaped to align with the story she wants told. For Blake to remain in that orbit required not just loyalty, but also alignment with Taylor's image. When cracks appeared, be it through missteps, leaked messages, or unguarded comments, Taylor may have quietly decided the friendship was no longer worth the risk. That choice, once made, was executed with the same precision as her career moves. No public blow-up, no messy drama, just a silent exclusion that spoke louder than any statement could. And yet, silence only fueled speculation. Fans dissected the guest list, highlighted who had been invited instead, and drew connections between those names and Taylor's recent alliances. They noticed Sabrina Carpenter, a younger star linked to Justin Baldoni, was still in Taylor's circle, which some took as evidence that Taylor was strategically picking sides in broader industry feuds. They pointed out that Travis Kelce himself had unfollowed Ryan Reynolds on social media, a tiny digital act that, in the world of celebrity culture, is loaded with meaning. These details, whether intentional or coincidental, fed into a narrative that Blake had been deliberately frozen out, that her years of proximity to Taylor had come to an abrupt, calculated end. But what does that say about friendship in the spotlight? Was Taylor and Blake's bond ever truly as strong as fans believed? Or was it always a performance, a mutually beneficial arrangement dressed up as sisterhood? The engagement snub raises uncomfortable questions about loyalty, authenticity, and the cost of fame. If even the most celebrated friendships can unravel this way, it forces fans to reconsider how much of what they see is real, and how much is carefully scripted for public consumption. For Blake, the absence was more than just missing a party. It was a public declaration that her role in Taylor's story was over. For Taylor, it was a way of drawing a boundary, of saying without words that the chapter had closed. Yet the story doesn't end there. Blake's own team, aware of how damaging this narrative could be, has worked overtime to spin her absence as no big deal, pointing to family time with Ryan and their children, birthday celebrations, and new film projects. Publicists have tried to paint her as unbothered, focused on her career and her family, uninterested in chasing friendships that no longer serve her. But fans aren't buying it. They see the timing, the silences, the lack of even a simple congratulatory message, and they draw their own conclusions. The contrast between the spin and the perception only makes the rupture feel more real. If Blake Lively's exclusion from Taylor Swift's wedding plans was already being dissected as a betrayal, the fallout only deepened as media outlets and fans began scouring past interviews for clues, turning every smile and every offhand comment into evidence of a deeper fracture. Old clips resurfaced where Taylor praised Blake's humor, where she called Blake's children her little muses, where the two appeared on each other's Instagram stories cooking, laughing, and sharing inside jokes. Now, viewed through the lens of absence, those very moments looked bittersweet, even hollow, as though they had been part of a performance for the cameras rather than a genuine bond. Tabloids thrive on rewriting history, and suddenly the narrative shifted from Taylor and Blake, Hollywood's best friendship, to Taylor and Blake, Hollywood's carefully staged PR alliance. The tragedy of this shift was not only in how the public reinterpreted the past, but also in how it forced both women to navigate their current identities through the lens of speculation. Taylor, for her part, said nothing publicly, letting her silence amplify the mystery. Blake, however, could not escape the whispers, and every public appearance became a test. Would she acknowledge Taylor, or would she act as though the friendship had never mattered at all? The engagement party itself became a symbol of this divide. Exclusive guests posted photos of the shimmering decorations, of Taylor and Travis dancing under string lights, of celebrities hugging one another as though part of a grand family reunion. Names like Gigi Hadid, Selena Gomez, and even lesser-known industry figures found their way into the spotlight for being present, but the absence of Blake overshadowed them all. Social media ran wild with memes contrasting Blake's supposed sadness with Taylor's glittering joy, creating an almost theatrical spectacle of winner and loser, inclusion and rejection. For Blake, whose own brand had long been tied to elegance, wit, and her supposed closeness to Taylor, the memes were brutal. In a world where perception can dictate power, being cast as the outsider was almost as damaging as being accused of wrongdoing. Insiders began to share more details, fanning the flames further. Some claimed that Blake had made a last-minute attempt to reach out, sending Taylor a message of congratulations that went unanswered. Others suggested that Taylor had intentionally withheld details about the proposal because she feared Blake might leak them or twist them into her own narrative. Still others whispered that the rift wasn't between the women directly, but between their partners. That Ryan Reynolds had allegedly clashed with Travis Kelce at a private gathering, creating tension that spilled over into the women's friendship. Each of these stories, true or not, added texture to the drama and made the absence feel not just personal but political, a matter of choosing alliances in a Hollywood landscape where friendships are often treated like strategic assets. The silence between Taylor and Blake also intersected with broader narratives about female friendship in Hollywood. Fans and commentators alike debated whether these high-profile relationships are ever as authentic as they appear. Some defended Taylor, arguing that as she entered a new chapter with Travis Kelce, she was entitled to redefine her circle and exclude anyone who didn't support her. Others sided with Blake, painting her as a loyal friend discarded for the sake of convenience, a casualty of Taylor's relentless brand management. Think pieces appeared in cultural magazines, dissecting the supposed death of female solidarity, turning what might have been a personal falling out into a symbol of broader societal anxieties. Suddenly the friendship wasn't just about two women. It was about the expectations we place on women to model loyalty in ways we rarely demand from men. As the weeks passed, the rift began to manifest in subtler, more insidious ways. Social media detectives noted that Blake unfollowed certain fan accounts dedicated to Taylor, while Ryan Reynolds noticeably avoided making his usual playful comments on Taylor-related posts. Meanwhile, Taylor seemed to grow closer to Selena Gomez, her other high-profile friend, sharing more public moments with her in what fans interpreted as a deliberate shift. In one viral TikTok, a user spliced together clips of Taylor and Selena laughing together with older clips of Taylor and Blake doing the same, setting it to melancholic music and captioning it, "Out with the old, in with the new." These small acts of comparison deepened the sting for Blake, whose absence was no longer just about missing a wedding. It was about being replaced in the narrative altogether. Financial stakes also played a role in the unfolding drama. Blake, juggling her own projects in Hollywood and entrepreneurial ventures in fashion and beverage lines, had long benefited from the Taylor effect. Being photographed with Taylor or mentioned in her orbit meant free publicity, a boost in cultural cachet that few other relationships could offer. Without that proximity, Blake risked losing not just emotional closeness but also professional relevance. Critics noted that while Blake had been building her brand for years, her association with Taylor had elevated her visibility in ways she might struggle to replicate on her own. The engagement snub, therefore, wasn't just personal humiliation. It carried economic consequences that could ripple through Blake's future projects. But perhaps the most telling part of this saga is how Blake herself responded. Publicly, she put on a brave face, continuing to appear at events with Ryan, posting about her children, and sharing updates about her latest business ventures. Yet fans, ever perceptive, noticed subtle changes in her tone. Posts that once carried a light-hearted, playful energy now seemed tinged with a defensive edge, as though she were consciously proving she didn't need Taylor to remain relevant. At one premiere, when asked about Taylor's engagement, Blake reportedly offered a polite but clipped, "I wish her all the best," a statement so carefully neutral that it only fueled speculation. For someone once so woven into Taylor's inner circle, the lack of warmth was jarring, a public confirmation that the closeness was gone. Meanwhile, Taylor's silence became its own kind of statement. She didn't unfollow Blake, she didn't shade her in lyrics, at least not directly. but she also didn't go out of her way to publicly mend the narrative. Instead, she seemed to let Blake fade quietly from her story, replacing her with other friends, other allies, other women who better fit the chapter she was writing now. This calculated approach was vintage Taylor, who has long understood that the most powerful response is often no response at all. For fans, though, the lack of closure was agonizing. They wanted answers, they wanted drama, they wanted a villain and a victim. But in the absence of explicit explanation, they projected their own interpretations, turning a personal fallout into a public spectacle that neither woman could fully control. And so the engagement party that should have been a fairy tale became a cultural touchstone, a symbol of shifting alliances, unspoken betrayals, and the fragility of even the most celebrated friendships. Blake's absence wasn't just a missing seat at a table. It was a declaration that her role in Taylor's life story was over, replaced by new characters and new narratives. Whether by choice or by circumstance, Blake had been written out, and the world was left to wonder whether the script had ever been real to begin with. What made the absence of Blake Lively sting even more in the eyes of fans and cultural critics alike was not only the personal betrayal, but the stark reminder of how quickly status in Hollywood can shift from central to irrelevant. 1 year earlier, it would have been unimaginable for Taylor Swift to stage a life-changing event and not include Blake in the inner circle. The two women were portrayed as practically inseparable, almost like family, their bond celebrated in glossy magazines and gossipy podcasts as a rare example of genuine Hollywood loyalty. But fame has always been a fickle beast, and when it decides to crown a new favorite, yesterday's best friend can become today's forgotten extra. In this case, Blake's absence was almost theatrical, not just a lack of presence but an active symbol of exclusion, amplified by the very fact that everyone expected her to be there. The space she left behind in photos and videos felt louder than the cheers of those who actually attended, and as guests posted selfies and toasts from Taylor's engagement, the comment sections were flooded less with congratulations and more with the repeated, haunting question, "Where's Blake?" This constant comparison began to chip away at Blake's carefully constructed public image. She had long been admired not just for her acting talent or her fashion choices, but for the way she seemed to float above the petty feuds that plague Hollywood. While other celebrities got sucked into scandals, Blake always presented herself as unbothered, confident, secure in her family life and professional success. But Taylor's engagement changed that narrative overnight. Suddenly, Blake was the one being pitted, the one being speculated about, the one fans imagined crying alone while her former best friend celebrated with a new circle. Whether fair or not, that perception carried real weight. Hollywood thrives on optics, and once the public begins to perceive you as weakened, every move you make becomes magnified under that lens. In the aftermath, the speculation did not slow down, it escalated. Fans on TikTok produced hour-long breakdowns of the friendship timeline, mapping out key moments that suggested a cooling long before the engagement. They pointed to the fact that Blake had skipped certain concerts on Taylor's record-breaking Eras tour, even though she had once been front row at nearly every major show. They noted that Taylor, who had been known to gush over Blake and Ryan Reynolds in interviews, hadn't mentioned them in months. They even dissected paparazzi photos, highlighting moments where Taylor seemed to be spending more time with other friends, such as Brittany Mahomes, who herself was rapidly becoming a fixture in Taylor's social orbit through her connection to Travis Kelce. These amateur sleuths created digital corkboards of evidence, drawing red lines between photos and dates as though solving a true crime mystery. The tabloids, of course, jumped on this frenzy with gusto. Headlines screamed about a friendship feud, speculating on everything from jealousy to betrayal. Some suggested that Blake was resentful of how Taylor's romance with Travis had consumed so much attention, overshadowing anything Blake was working on. Others hinted that Taylor had grown tired of Blake's tendency to dominate conversations with her own witty quips, stealing spotlight at gatherings where Taylor preferred to be the central figure. More salacious rumors claimed that Ryan Reynolds, with his famously sharp tongue, had made jokes at Travis Kelce's expense that crossed the line, jokes that Taylor did not forgive. The lack of official confirmation from either camp only gave these theories more oxygen. Without facts, rumor becomes reality in the court of public opinion. Perhaps the most devastating blow for Blake, however, was how quickly the world seemed to move on without her. While her absence was initially the story of the engagement, within weeks Taylor's new life with Travis became the primary focus. Photos of the couple holding hands, traveling together, and laughing at football games dominated headlines, pushing Blake's absence further into the background. Yet the sting remained, because every joyful image of Taylor's new chapter served as an implicit reminder of Blake's exclusion. In essence, Blake had not only lost her role in Taylor's life, but had also lost her role in the cultural narrative that Taylor commanded. To be invisible in such a moment was perhaps the harshest form of erasure. And still, Blake tried to project strength. She appeared on talk shows, promoting her upcoming projects with charm and wit, carefully sidestepping questions about Taylor by redirecting conversations to her family or her businesses. But the cracks showed in small ways. A tight smile when pressed about her friendships, a slightly defensive tone when asked about how she balances her personal and professional life. These micro-moments were seized upon by the same social media sleuths who had already declared her a casualty of Taylor's rise. To them, Blake was no longer the untouchable queen of poise. She was a wounded figure, navigating the humiliation of being cut out of one of the most glamorous celebrations of the decade. The tragedy here, of course, is not just about one friendship falling apart, but about the nature of celebrity itself. Fame amplifies everything. Joy becomes ecstasy. Absence becomes betrayal, silence becomes scandal. In any other world, two women drifting apart might be a quiet, even natural process, something acknowledged with a wistful sigh and then left in peace. But for Taylor and Blake, their friendship had been woven into their brands so deeply that its dissolution became a matter of public debate, a storyline for fans and critics to consume. The engagement party was supposed to be about love and beginnings, yet it also became a symbol of endings. An ending that hurt precisely because it had once seemed so perfect. As the dust settled from the engagement spectacle, with Taylor Swift basking in the glow of her new chapter alongside Travis Kelce, Blake Lively found herself at a crossroads both personally and professionally, navigating a world where her absence had become more famous than her presence. For fans, the question of "where's Blake?" morphed into a broader cultural narrative. What happens when a friendship built on the stage of celebrity collapses in plain sight? The truth, as many insiders and analysts suggested, was that the fracture between Taylor and Blake had been brewing beneath the surface for years, long before the ring, the garden proposal, or the carefully staged photos. This wasn't about one night, one invite, or one oversight. It was the inevitable culmination of tensions, power struggles, and shifting priorities in a world where image often matters more than intimacy. And yet, the engagement snub crystallized it all into one iconic moment. A clean break made messier by silence and speculation. For Taylor, the choice to exclude Blake may have been cold but necessary. For Blake, the exclusion was devastating not only because it ended a friendship, but because it reshaped her public identity in ways she couldn't control. The deeper one digs, the more the cracks in their relationship reveal themselves as the predictable outcome of two powerful women trying to balance personal closeness with public performance. Taylor has always been meticulous about her brand, curating her friendships as carefully as her albums, ensuring that every person in her orbit reflects back the image she wants the world to see. Blake, with her sharp wit and independent success, was an ideal partner in this performance, until she wasn't. Sources close to the matter hint at several catalysts. A disagreement backstage at an Eras Tour concert where Blake allegedly overstepped boundaries. Tensions between Ryan Reynolds and Travis Kelce over offhand jokes that Taylor perceived as disrespect. And even whispers that Blake had privately criticized some of Taylor's choices, critiques that, once discovered, were interpreted as betrayal. None of these stories alone may have ended the friendship, but together they painted a picture of a bond fraying at the edges. The engagement simply provided the perfect stage for Taylor to make her quiet but definitive choice. What makes the fallout so fascinating, and so heartbreaking, is how much it reveals about the intersection of friendship and fame. In ordinary life, friendships evolve, fade, or break apart, often with little fanfare. But for celebrities like Taylor and Blake, their friendship was never just theirs. It belonged to the public, a story told through Instagram posts, red carpet appearances, and magazine covers. Fans weren't just observers. They were participants, emotionally invested in the idea of these two women as sisters, allies, and role models. So when that image shattered, it wasn't just Blake who lost something. It was millions of fans who felt betrayed by the illusion. The parasocial nature of celebrity culture meant that people projected their own hopes and insecurities onto Taylor and Blake's friendship, making its demise feel personal. The engagement snub wasn't simply about a missed party. It became a cultural event, dissected on TikTok, debated in think pieces, and immortalized in memes. Blake's attempts to move forward have been both admirable and tragic. She has leaned into her identity as a mother and wife, showcasing her family life with Ryan Reynolds as proof that she doesn't need Taylor to validate her. She has thrown herself into entrepreneurial projects, from her beverage company to her fashion collaborations, framing herself as a businesswoman in control of her destiny. Yet the shadow of Taylor lingers. Every time Blake posts, comments flood her mentions asking about Taylor, demanding explanations, or mocking her exclusion. In a cruel twist, even her silence on the matter becomes content, fueling speculation that she is bitter, heartbroken, or secretly plotting a comeback. It is the curse of celebrity. Once you are woven into a narrative larger than yourself, you can never fully escape it. Taylor, meanwhile, has flourished in the wake of the engagement. With Travis Kelce at her side and a new circle of friends, she has managed to shift the conversation almost entirely away from Blake. Her brand has only grown stronger. Her image as a woman in love and at the top of her career cemented further. Some argue that this is by design, that Taylor, always several steps ahead, orchestrated this transition deliberately, cutting ties with Blake at the precise moment when she could do so with minimal risk to her public image. Others suggest that Taylor simply moved on, that her silence is less about calculation and more about emotional detachment, the kind that comes when one has outgrown a relationship. Either way, the result is the same. Taylor thrives, while Blake struggles to redefine herself outside of Taylor's orbit. And yet, the story is not without complexity. For all the speculation and analysis, it is possible, perhaps even likely, that both women feel the loss deeply, even if they will never admit it publicly. Friendship, after all, is not a brand strategy or a PR stunt. Beneath the polished images and choreographed appearances, there was once genuine affection, laughter, and trust. To lose that, no matter how famous you are, hurts. Taylor may have chosen silence as her weapon, and Blake may have chosen dignity as her shield, but neither choice erases the ache of what once was. Fans may frame the narrative as victory and defeat, inclusion and rejection, but the truth is more nuanced. Two women who once found comfort in each other's company now find themselves strangers, watching each other's lives unfold from a distance. The engagement that should have been remembered solely for love and celebration will forever carry this shadow. For Taylor, it marks the beginning of a new era, one defined by love, stability, and fresh alliances. For Blake, it marks the end of an era, the moment she transitioned from central figure to forgotten friend, from muse to memory. And for the world watching, it serves as a reminder of the fragility of relationships under the glare of fame. No matter how perfect a friendship may look on the outside, no matter how many photos or quotes paint a picture of sisterhood, the pressures of power, ego, and public scrutiny can unravel it faster than anyone expects. The Taylor Blake saga is not just gossip. It is a cultural parable about the price of visibility, the illusion of permanence, and the loneliness that often hides behind the brightest spotlights. In the end, the absence of Blake Lively from Taylor Swift's engagement was not just a missing name on a guest list. It was a statement, a turning point, and perhaps even a warning. Hollywood friendships may dazzle, but they are rarely built to last, and when they collapse, they do so in ways that captivate the world and leave scars on those involved. For Blake, the challenge now is not just to survive the humiliation but to rise above it, to carve out a new identity that cannot be defined by Taylor's presence or absence. For Taylor, the challenge is to maintain the image of joy and loyalty she projects while knowing that her silence speaks louder than words. For fans, the challenge is to reconcile their fantasies of everlasting sisterhood with the reality that even celebrities are human, flawed, and capable of leaving each other behind. And so the story continues, not in whispered text messages or glittering parties, but in the collective memory of a culture that loves to build its icons up, loves even more to watch them fall, and never forgets the moments when friendship becomes fracture and love becomes loss. Subscribe my channel Coravanta for more updates daily. We says to sorry because we did not upload yesterday. Thanks or watching. Subscribe my channel. Thanks. Subscribe my channel Coravanta for more updates daily. We says to sorry because we did not upload yesterday. Thanks or watching. Subscribe my channel. Thanks.